I want to tell you one last story. This is about a man who, like my violin, he had his strings and had his voice. And then he lost that. He lost all that. He lost his voice, and then he got his voice back again. And that man changed my life. His name is Chad Hymas. So you might have heard of Chad. He was really quite an athlete when he was young. He was a real handsome guy. He had a beautiful wife, 2 lovely children. He really had the world by the tail. This was an awesome guy, and he had the dream. And his dream was to become a farmer, believe it or not. He wanted to have an elk farm and raise elk. And he wanted to move about as far away from people as he could go, because he didn't really care much for people. What he really liked was animals, and he loved nature. And so he just wanted to go far away where he didn't really have to deal with a world of people. Well, one day when Chad was going about the business of his dream, he was out putting hay up with his tractor. And he had a 1-ton bale of hay on the front of that on his forks. Now, this is something that he'd done hundreds of times, maybe thousands of times. And so he was loading that on a trailer, and he lifted up the bale of hay high above his head and put it on the trailer. And then all of a sudden something went terribly, terribly wrong. Chad looked up, and that 1-ton bale of hay was coming backwards over the trailer, and it came down, and it landed right on his head and crushed him underneath 1-ton mountain of hay. Well, some people say that Chad was lucky to have survived that. He was airlifted to a nearby hospital, 8 hours of surgery, titanium rod stuck down his neck, broken bones, and worst of all, when he came to consciousness, he couldn't feel anything from his shoulders down. That was a tragedy. Well, Chad was, he felt pretty bad about all of that. He actually felt quite worthless. And he became very self-absorbed, as you might imagine, in that circumstance. You could see every dream, every goal, every ambition in his life was taken away. And there he was, stuck in a hospital bed. He had more mental pain than he had physical pain. Have you ever felt worthless? Have you ever felt like you wanted to die? Maybe you can identify a little bit with what Chad was feeling. Well, in the midst of his despair and his depression, his father came and visited him in the hospital. And he said, "Chad, how long are you going to go on like this? How long are you going to keep thinking about yourself?" He says, "You know, you've got other things to worry about. This is not about you." Well, you know, that made Chad mad. Really. He was angry with his father. All he wanted was to have somebody make everything right again, like it used to be. Turn the clock backwards so he could crawl back up on that tractor and just try loading that bale of hay one more time. But his dad couldn't do that. Nobody could do that. Things were the way they were. And Chad knew that his dad was right. Chad knew he had a sweet wife at home, 2 little boys, and that he had a responsibility. He had to figure out some way to provide for this little family. So he had to stop thinking about himself. And that's really a pretty tall order when you can't raise a spoon to your mouth, you can't put on your own shoes, you can't open a door. But Chad had to find a way to overcome his adversity so he could go help others overcome theirs. So, as a quadriplegic, Chad had to learn a lot of new skills. He had to learn to brush his teeth without the use of his fingers. He had to learn to put on his pants without being able to lift his legs. He had to learn how to catch a basketball so he could play ball with his sons when he couldn't catch a ball. And he had to learn how to be intimate with his wife when he couldn't feel anything from his neck down. But he learned all those things and much more. Chad he had an interesting epiphany. He realized that he had nothing to work with except what was from here up, and that left him essentially 2 things. It left him a voice, and it left him a mind. And so he decided to use his voice to help others overcome their difficulties. Well, the fiddle would no longer work for him, but he did have a voice, and he found this new voice, sort of like my violin. What do you think his message was? It was to forget about yourself and to go and do good for others. And Chad continues to share that. I want to share this beautiful video with you to conclude. Listen to the song.
There are times when you might feel aimless and can't see the places where you belong, but you will find that there is a purpose. It's been there within you all along, and when you're near it, you can almost hear it. It's like a symphony. Just keep listening, and pretty soon you'll start to figure out your part. Everyone plays a piece in their own melodies, and each one of us, oh, it's glorious. And you will know how to let it ring out as you discover who you are. Others around you will start to wake up to the sounds that are in their hearts. It's so amazing what we're all creating. It's like a symphony. Just keep listening, and pretty soon you'll start to figure out your part. Everyone plays a piece in their own melodies, and each one of us, oh, is glorious. And as you feel the notes build, you will see. It's like a symphony. Just keep listening, and pretty soon you'll start to figure out your part. Everyone plays a piece in their own melodies, and each one of us, oh, is glorious.
Chad Hymas. He changed my life. It's like a symphony. Just keep listening. And pretty soon, you'll start to figure out your part. Everyone plays a piece. And there are melodies inside of each of us. It's glorious. After I heard Chad's talk, the first thing I wanted to do was never forget this message. And so I made me up a screensaver. I still have it. Every time you open my phone, it says, just say yes, because it's not about you. And I'm telling you, that's been valuable. I probably look at that thing 20, 30 times a day. And I can't tell you how many times Chad has whispered in my ears to do the right thing and serve other people